Welcome, technicians, to This Explainer. Today, we're decoding a scenario that honestly causes way too much unnecessary panic out in the field. We're talking about the critical difference between normal, harmless ice buildup and actual, dangerous liquid return on commercial refrigeration compressors. If you've ever walked into a plant, saw a completely frosted over unit, and felt your stomach just drop, well, you are in exactly the right place. Let's just dive right in.
So picture this. It's a classic field mystery. You walk up to a commercial fish freezer or maybe a heavy-duty ice cream cold room. The evaporation temperature is a bone-chilling minus 40 degrees. You look at the compressor and boom, it is completely encased in a thick, solid block of ice. Instantly, your brain hits the red alert, right? You're terrified of liquid return. But let's take a step back for a second and ask ourselves, does a compressor covered in ice automatically mean liquid is returning to destroy the equipment?
Here is our investigative guide for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the ice mystery. Second, the physics of return. Third, measuring superheat. Fourth, the distance rule. And finally, we'll wrap up with the false diagnosis.
All right, part one. Let's tackle the ice mystery. See, there's often this massive disconnect between what our eyes are screaming at us and what the system's actually doing. We make this instant visual assumption that a frozen compressor equals immediate danger, but we've got to separate the visual deception of the ice on the outside from the physical reality happening inside the pipes. The truth is, ice alone absolutely does not guarantee that liquid refrigerant is coming back to slug the compressor. You could very well have safe, cold vapor flowing perfectly.
It's all about understanding the environment. In a minus 40-degree system, the fluid coming back to the compressor is saturated, sure, but it is at such an extreme low temperature that even as pure vapor, it's literally cold enough to instantly freeze any ambient moisture in the air. That's what freezes the suction line, it freezes the crankcase, and it coats the whole compressor in ice. But internally, everything's humming along perfectly. The oil remains liquid, and it's safely lubricating the connecting rods, the pistons, the rings, the whole shebang. It looks like an absolute disaster on the outside, but it is a perfectly healthy machine on the inside.
Which brings us to part two, the physics of return.
To really get what's happening, we have to look at the science of heat exchange. To avoid liquid return, you absolutely must have a minimum heat exchange taking place in the evaporator. We call this the delta T. This temperature difference is your definitive proof that the liquid refrigerant is actually doing its job, absorbing heat from the room and fully boiling off into a gas before heading back down the line. If you've got a delta T, you've got gas returning, not liquid.
Let's test this in the real world. Say we're working with R22 gas. You read your suction pressure, and it's sitting at 0 psi. You check your chart, and the matching saturation temp for 0 psi is minus 40 degrees Celsius. Okay, so now you measure the actual temperature of the suction pipe. If that pipe is also exactly minus 40 degrees, yeah, you've got a huge problem. That means your delta T is 0. Absolutely no heat exchange happened in the evaporator. The temperature didn't rise a single degree, which means liquid is definitely coming back.
Let's pivot over to part 3, measuring superheat. Let's take all the visual guesswork out of the equation. Here is exactly how you measure it. Step 1, read your suction pressure with your digital manifold. Step 2, find that corresponding saturation temperature. Step 3, and guys, this is absolutely critical. Clamp your temperature sensor about 20 centimeters away from the compressor and make sure it is tucked firmly underneath the insulation so you're getting the actual pipe temperature, not the ambient air. Finally, calculate the Kelvin difference between the saturation temp and your actual pipe temp. That difference, that is your exact superheat value.
Now for part 4, the distance rule.
This is the golden rule because your acceptable superheat depends entirely on the length of that suction line. If the evaporator is sitting really close to the compressor, say just 5 meters away, a healthy superheat is going to be right around 15 Kelvin. But if you've got a long 30-meter run separating them, your target shifts to around 25 Kelvin. Why? Because even with the best, thickest elastomeric insulation, a long pipe run is naturally going to absorb more ambient heat over that distance. So you always have to factor the physical distance of the system into your math.
And finally, part 5, the false diagnosis. So what happens if your math drops into the dangerously low 5 to 10 Kelvin range? Well, the mystery is solved. Liquid is definitely hitting that compressor. If it's supposed to be 15 Kelvin for a short run, but you're only reading 5, you have definitive mathematical proof of liquid return. The visual ice didn't tell you that, the math did.
And why does this actually happen? Usually, it's human error. Liquid returns when we open the expansion valve way too much. Instead of the refrigerant properly boiling and saturating inside the evaporator where it belongs, that excessive flow pushes the entire boiling process right out of the evaporator and into the suction line. And as we all know, the suction line just isn't designed to evaporate liquid. So boom, liquid hits the compressor.
The ice is honestly just a visual side effect of the cold, but your superheat calculation, that is the undeniable truth. So think about it. The next time you face a frozen compressor on a service call, will you panic over the visual trick of the ice, or will you trust your superheat math to tell you the real story? Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.